This is Warren Barry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions. And I want to welcome you back to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, where we celebrate people who are making ripples and making a huge difference in the world today. Today's guest, she's a powerhouse of heart, humility, and leadership, Valerie Paris, the Chief Operating Officer of Durvet Corporation. Valerie's story is one of grit, grace, and goose feathers. Gotta admit, she grew up on a farm in Missouri, learned the value of hard work early, and built a career that's all about empowering people. Now, we also dove into her upcoming book, Be Her Biggest Fan, a heartfelt collection of short stories inspired by her daughter's journey from a toddler to collegiate softball player, and the lessons about parenting, perseverance, and self advocacy that came along the way. Now, let me tell you, there's one story in there involving a very unexpected punch in the face moment that completely reframed how she saw herself as both a mother and a leader. Now, in this episode, Valerie and I talked about the importance of self promotion and finding your voice. How leadership isn't just about power, it's about empowerment. And how kindness and grace can ripple from the workplace right into our homes. Now, this was Valerie's first ever Pondcast appearance, and trust me, it's a flocking great one. So grab your coffee, settle in, and join me as we dive into leadership, life lessons, and what it really truly means to better the pond with Valerie Paris. Well, this is another edition of the Better the Pond podcast. And today I am absolutely excited, delighted, beside myself. My feathers are ruffled in anticipation to talk to the Valerie. Not only is she the Valerie, but it's Valerie Paris, all the way from Kansas City, home of America's home of barbecue. If anybody from Dallas is listening, that we won't pay any attention to that. But not only you are an incredible human being, Valerie, because we met with your. I was fortunate enough to be with your Vistage group. So Tony Lewis gets a big shout out, Vistage International. That's where we met.
Yep.
And so you are from a professional side. You are the COO of Durvet Corporation, so you're pet supplies, and we can kind of talk a little bit about the company. But more importantly, again, being an amazing human being, super fun, super smart, but also an author with your book
I
coming out
am.
around Christmas. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But Valerie Paris, thank you so much for taking the time to have your very first, the first Pondcast
Be first.
experience on the Better the Pond podcast. So happy to help you. Help you.
Thank,
Have you.
thank you, and thanks for the warm welcome. Because yeah, this is my very first time ever pond casting or podcasting.
Yes. So, and I know you see already you are a natural. There's absolutely nothing to worry about.
Yeah, we're just having a conversation.
Exact 100%. So, before we get into a bit about you, Valerie, why don't you tell my audience a little bit about the business, the company, first of what sort of what does the company do, and what's your role there?
So I work at Durvet, and we're an animal health distribution company. We're a little bit unique that we are owned by 22 member distributors throughout the United States, and those member distributor owners are also our customers. 98% of our sales go to those people.
Hmm.
So having your customers also being your owners is a different line to have to walk. It makes a unique situation as also being a part of a co-op. So we distribute our profits at the end of the year back to them based upon their sales and their profitability that they provided to the company.
This is like being a member of Costco. You get like your 4% back. The more you buy, the more you get back.
Absolutely. That's exactly the way that it is. Yes, please buy more so that we can get more back.
The more you buy, the more you save. I got it. Ah,
Exactly.
that's a very. I didn't know that was your model. That was very unique.
Yeah. And so Durvet in its natural name is a generic name, much like if you go to Walmart and have Equate brand, that's what the Durvet label is like the Equate label.
Oh, okay. So it's a generalized label across it. So your own label, your own branding of product.
Correct. Yeah, we don't do anything with formulation or manufacturing or anything like that. But yeah, slap our label on it and make some effort, extra profit along the way. That's the goal, right?
That is the goal, right? Just always remember when it comes to finance that black is a good number.
Yeah, right. Buy low, sell high. That's all
Yes,
I
that's it. That's it.
have.
And so you are the COO,
Am.
and then yeah. So tell me, give me a little stuff, a little overview, sort of the day to day of COO Duvet.
Oh, well, I'm such a squirrel. There is no day that is like any other day. Um, basically, if it's not sales and marketing oriented, it is my responsibility to make sure it happens. So between accounting, finance, customer service, IT, the warehouse and logistics, what else do I have? The facilities, HR, just a couple things, making sure that we are all running in the same direction, getting product in the door, getting product back out the door, making sure it's billed correctly, that type thing. And then a little bit of insurance and some other fun things thrown in. Like I said, there's no day that I could say this was exactly like yesterday. I'm not a Groundhog Day fan, so.
Yeah, that I know. So it sounds to me like you're like the bowl like that holds the salad. Like you hold it all together.
That's yeah, we'll say that. That's what should be happening.
Oh, with Valerie, with you at the helm, there is no question that it's going to be like next level. That's without a doubt.
I do have high expectations, that is for sure.
Yeah,
So
100%. Okay, so now that we got the Durvet thing sort of out of the way, now let's just go to the next little piece because you are an author. And you got a book coming out, but by where things stand right now is around Christmas time. So the book is called "Be Her Biggest Fan." So let's showcase that for a second, and tell us about the book and what was your reason behind writing it?
sure. So the book is a series of short stories about my daughter and her experience starting from the age of 2 all the way into collegiate softball playing, and the people that she came across, what she learned through all the lessons, between teammates and coaches, parents along the side, who was making shirts, who was cheering, who wasn't cheering for her success, and just kind of some of the mistakes she made, but also the lessons that she learned in the meantime, and the people that supported her and helped her get where she is today, playing college softball.
So, what made you write it? What was there? I'm going to make an assumption here a bit. We know about assumptions, but I'm going to make one anyway. But I'm going to think about that. There was a defining moment that made you go, "I want to capture this and write about this."
So the book starts out with I punched my daughter in the face, and I literally punched her in the face. It was just a little touch, on the nose. I don't know if you've ever done those little flinching games,
Yeah.
but yeah, I got a little too close one day on the edge of the softball field, and that wasn't the defining moment. I can't really point to one spot, but the series of Be Her Biggest Fan kept rolling through my mind over and over and over again. And whenever something like that happens, I believe there's a purpose behind that. And
Mm.
I decided to feed on that purpose. And I have a few other things that are rolling around in my brain these days too. So this is just the beginning for the Valerie Paris on the front of a book cover. So I'm excited.
I love it. And when somebody reads the book, what would you want them to walk away with?
Don't give up. There's some stories of some hardships that she had to learn. There's also those people that were supportive, but she had some tough coaches. I mean, especially during COVID, I
Mm.
really thought that she was going to give up. Her coach that year was really tough on her, never really gave her a shot after he put her on the team. And that was probably the driving factor of She was 14, and I really started making that switch to create that independence in her, leading her and teaching her how to have those hard conversations for herself, as opposed to mom having that conversation for her.
So, are you telling me that you're not a helicopter mom? Is that what you're saying, Valerie?
I am so far not a helicopter mom. No, no. So I'm the youngest of three girls, and my mom raised all of us to be very independent and to, in her words, not need a man. And all of our husbands know that she raised us. In fact, I think my husband just learned that lesson again last Christmas when she told him again, I raised her not to need you. You know that, right? So, I mean, you know, even though we were raised that way, I obviously love my husband. We are a very good balance to one another, but that's the way that I wanted my daughter to learn too, is you're independent and you can do anything on your own.
Yeah, so it's interesting, you've taught her that she can advocate for herself, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then there's a lot of power behind that, right? Not ego, but power. Yeah.
Yeah. I just I knew that at some point she would have to do it on her own, and there's no sense in being 25 and have to have a conversation with your boss. You
Right.
know, from nothing. You've never had to do that before because mom's always been making the phone calls. And so at 14, I just started to turn over those reins.
Nice. It is interesting just on this point, and we'll move on, but it's so interesting looking at the workforce coming up and how, over time things are changing as a younger, the youth are coming up into the workforce. And, one of the interesting things for a lot of them, they've never heard the word no.
Yeah,
And because everything's been done for them. So all of a sudden, when they say, "Well, I don't want to work Fridays," we're like, "Well, since when do you have a say?" Right? Like, well, but well, no, you can't. And then it's this big shocker because, well, they've never heard no because all they've heard for their whole life is yes.
right.
And so good for you to take that that parenting stance to say no. That's I'm going to teach her to be right to take care of herself instead of being reliable upon everybody else to do it for her.
Yes. And both of
Oh,
my kids are that way.
the Valerie. Look at you.
I know. I'm just amazing. I mean, we've talked about that, but
Yeah, it was a very long conversation.
I'm sure it was.
So this is a good lead in because this is the point where we get to talk about the Valerie. So
Okay.
the Valerie, what got you from being a gosling? Now remember, this is a Pondcast. So the gosling is where were you hatched? Where did you start life? So what got you from being a gosling to the time when you left the nest? So like you left the nest. So either there was one of two things that happened. Either you get kicked out and say, go fly, have fun. Or, right, you said, no, you know what? I'm ready to go. I'm going to fly on my own. So there's the time that you're leaving the nest to where you are today in this very moment. The Valerie, what is your backstory?
So I was born a couple years ago.
You were
In
born
March,
at a very young age.
I
You know
was
that.
born at a very young age.
Yeah.
That's correct. In Marshall, Missouri. So Marshall, Missouri today has about 12,000 people. I'm not sure how big it was back then. Like I said, I was the youngest of three girls. There's only, 5 years between all of us. So from beginning to end, 5 years. I grew up on a farm. So since there were no boys in my family, girls had to do boy work. So from
Air
driving,
quotes. Air quotes.
right? Yes.
Okay.
Driving tractors, baling hay, moving hay bales, cultivating corn, whatever that meant. That's what I did. I watched my parents struggle financially for their whole entire time that we were kids. And I watched the hours that they worked. And my mom was a kind of a serial entrepreneur. She
Oh,
worked outside the home. I mean, my dad, obviously, my dad was full-time farmer, but my mom worked outside the home. But anytime that they felt like they needed any extra income, she was always doing something. She was baking pies for the women's guild to sell. She was making cinnamon rolls to sell at the coffee shop on Saturday mornings. I mean, she was always figuring out some way somehow to make some extra money. And I decided probably my sophomore year of high school that I did not want to marry a farmer. Um, I needed to get off the farm. So I ended up going to Springfield, Missouri to college at Missouri State or Southwest Missouri State at the time. And I went on a band scholarship. Now, don't get too excited. We don't band anymore at my house, but I did get a few $100 back in the day to play in the marching band, and I think I ended up with frostbite in my last football game out there. So thank God it was the last one. But
What was your instrument of choice?
so funny enough, both of my sisters were clarinet players. And so, of course, pass it down the line, right? So I started as a clarinet player before I ever started in band. But then I ended up playing the flute and piccolo all the way into college.
A piccoloist.
Yeah,
You're the first piccoloist, I think. That's made up word that I've met in my entire life. The Valeries played piccolo.
really.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, I could probably pick it up and maybe belt out a Brahms lullaby or something like that. I don't know.
On the piccolo? Really?
It does have a lower range too. I mean, not
Uh,
everything is trilling, so
oh, okay. Yes. I mean, I just think of like like the Civil War with the guy with the piccolo. That's what comes to my brain
oh
automatically, right? It's just,
yeah.
that's what just comes to my head. Okay, so leaving now, I just have a question for you. When you decided to leave the nest,
Yes.
was that you making a choice to say this is the direction I want to go? And how hard was it leaving the farm?
So it was it was not a difficult decision to leave the farm. That was never even in a question. Like I said, I didn't want to marry a farmer. I just wasn't interested in that lifestyle whatsoever. It was watching my parents struggle
Mm,
for 8 years, and I just did not want to follow that path. The funny thing is both of my parents really were entrepreneurial. I mean, my dad as a farmer, how many different things does he know that he doesn't even think about that he knows? He just knows.
mhm.
Um, out of necessity, my mom, like I said, she was always trying to do something to fill in, but neither one of them had made it past high school. So I'm a first gen college graduate. Now, I wasn't the first. My middle sister beat me by one semester. But yeah, first gen college graduate.
Oh, wow. And so you one other sister was a college grad. What about the other one? What about the third one?
The oldest one, she did go to college. She tried a couple times to the community college and wanted to start family and things like that before she had completed. So she ended up leaving before she got her certificate.
Ah, so we're in college. And what did you take in college?
I started as an ag business major.
Oh.
So my goal was always to be able to finance people on the farm. That was always the goal. I saw them struggle financially, so I wanted to make sure that they had the funding through loans to be able to fund their output every spring. And so that was always the goal to work at Farm Credit Services. Actually, that was forever my goal. If you look through my senior book, that's exactly what it says. It says how much I expected to make, everything. And then after semester one, what is it called? My counselor advisor told me that I needed to take horticulture and soils. And I said, I don't think I do. I don't think that I need to know those things to be able to make loans to people that need to put out their crops. And so I was working at the time at a grocery distribution center And so I went around to all of the college graduates that I worked with, all of these people, and said, what should I do? And so I talked to people that had gotten their degrees in accounting, people just general business, some history majors, I think, that were working there, and finally ended up with finance. So I got my BS degree in finance. And I think it was just because it was so general, it probably fits me well that I got a little bit of everything, but not a lot of anything, which is
Ah,
why I'm such a squirrel.
an outstanding generalist, right?
Outstanding generalist.
You
Yeah,
know a little about a lot, right?
that's true.
That
Yep.
is a talent.
Some would say yes.
I would say, I think it's amazing. So, so as you were taking, as you were playing the piccolo to the promised land, so you got, so obviously you got your degree, you passed, you went into college, you did your thing, right? You got your piece of paper that proved, right, that you're an outstanding generalist. And then where did you go from there to get you where you are today?
So interestingly enough, the company that I work for now is patterned exactly after the grocery distribution center that I worked at in college. And after college, I was working part-time in Springfield in the credit department, and the Kansas City location was taking over all of the accounting duties for that location and then had bought a couple other locations. So they offered me full-time employment in Kansas City. So I transferred from Springfield to Kansas City for my first big girl job out of college at Associated Wholesale Grocers in Kansas City, Kansas, and worked my way up through a few of the ins and outs, raised my hand, got a couple promotions, and then got to a point where I just couldn't advance anymore without some retail experience in the grocery industry. So this was right before Y2K, and I ended up kind of Y2King for a minute through a couple different industries to end up at Durvet.
And here you are.
And here I am.
So along that journey, right? You obviously, you met your wonderful husband along the way, who is, so he's in a completely different profession than you.
Yeah.
And then you had your two girls along the way there as well, correct?
I have a son and a daughter.
A son
Yes.
and a daughter.
Yes. My son is a senior at Missouri State. He is a marketing major and he works at a law firm. So he is contemplating going to law school right
Hmm.
now. My daughter is going to Moberly. She's at the community college. She got injured for the second time playing softball just a couple months ago. So it kind of ended the softball journey abruptly, but she's in a good place with her mindset and things right now. She's going to continue to travel with the team. She is a human science, social behavior, something like that major at the community college. After she graduates, she as well is going to go to Missouri State. Now, mom has nothing to do with this conversation. I did not influence my children whatsoever to be Bears, but go Bears. Um, both of them made that decision on their own. And yeah, so she'll finish up being a psychology major and she wants to be a police officer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Following in dad's footsteps.
Yes, following in dad's footsteps.
So, if I may ask, just as her softball career, because of this injury, did that end her softball journey altogether? Like,
Yeah, it's over. Whenever she dislocated her shoulder back in March, and we figured that was probably it. She did spend the summer PTing and getting herself built back up to where she could get back on the field. Walked back on the field, and on day 4 took a soft little toss over to the first baseman, just a crossbody toss, and threw it back out again, and that was
that was the end of
way
it.
too much. So yeah, she'll come home at Christmas. She's gonna have surgery again in Christmas, get it all tightened back up so
Yeah.
that she's ready for her future endeavors.
But look at all the lessons and things that she's learned along the way, especially at her age, right? So that'll take her far into her future as well.
Yeah. She's a little thing. She's 5'2", $120 when she's on a heavy day. So so being a police officer obviously is going to be a little bit of a challenge for her, but I have no doubt this child is scrappy enough to make an impact. So
But powerful, but powerful. See, power versus force, and having a mom like the Valerie, right? Right, and then dad's guidance, right? A powerhouse, right? She's going to make the world a safer place for the rest of us.
I hope so.
Uh,
Yeah,
it's not hope. We know, right, Valerie?
we know.
Okay,
Yes.
there we go. All
She
right.
can do big things.
So I have two quick questions for you before we move on to the next question. Just going back talking about your parents and the thing that what you witnessed and what you watched, and you learned a lot from that. But if you think about your mom and dad, is what was the number one lesson that you learned from your mom growing up, do you think?
Mm-mm. Nothing can stop you.
Be her biggest fan. Hmm.
Be her
Okay.
biggest fan. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And what about your dad? What would be the number one sort of lesson that you learned from him growing up?
So my dad is such a people person. He wants everyone to like him, doesn't want to upset anyone. But the biggest thing that I take from him all the time is you gotta know. He always told us girls, you gotta know. So we would go to him for advice and talk it through with him. And if he didn't agree with kind of where you were heading, he would always leave it to you, you gotta know. And if you make a mistake, I'm still here, but you gotta know where you're headed. So
Hmm. That's so funny. I think about my dad growing up, and I remember I think I was probably 15 or 16, and dad was sitting in his chair, and I said, Dad, what time should I be home? And he just looked at me and he says, You know what time that is.
yeah,
You
nothing
know.
good happens after midnight. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, okay, yeah, I get it, right? I still remember that because why am I asking when I already knew,
Right.
right? And if I pushed it past, then it was like, well, but you knew, so why did you know it? So he threw accountability back on me, right? So that's
Yeah.
that's interesting you say that. So,
It's funny though. So all of us kids worked at McDonald's because that was the only place there was to work, really. So we all decided that we were going to work the early shift, so 5 to 1. That was our shift on Saturdays and Sundays. All three of us did this shift 5 to 1. So we knew what time we had to be home because we had to be up at 4 to leave by 4:30. So it
oh,
was up to us because there was no napping once you got home at 1:30 in the afternoon. There was, weeds to be pulled or work in the garden to do, those types of things. So yeah, you got to know.
I don't know. And well, and too, like, and also you probably, if you reflect back, you just think about the work ethic that you learned being on the farm. Like, just if you didn't feel like it that day, well, that was just too bad.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter, right? It
What
doesn't
was
really
it my dad always said? The calves don't care if you don't feel good, the ice still needs to be cut. So
yeah.
they're still thirsty.
They're still thirsty. Yeah, they don't care how you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it. Okay. So now next question for you, Valerie, is what is the number one thing, like the biggest thing that in your life that's either positive or negative that has happened to you that's ruffled your feathers? And how did you respond to it?
Oh, the biggest thing. Oh, I can't say that one because it involves Chris and I won't do that to him. Um, I got passed over for a promotion that I thought that I fully rightly deserved.
Mm,
And it was given to someone I didn't think that was vetted completely. And um, sent me on a negative trajectory for a little while. But I think the biggest impact that made. Number one, I'm not the type usually to self-promote, but that was kind of one of those moments of reality of if I would have self-promoted myself a little bit stronger, that I think that could have changed. Now, this individual ended up only being with the company for 5 months. It was decided after week 2 that he should have probably not been hired, but it took 5 months before we actually made that move. So
So, what did you learn from that?
probably just the fact, and it's kind of that be her biggest fan, be your own biggest fan, make sure that you're raising your hand and letting people know who you are, what you're doing. Don't be afraid to show and say what you've done for the company or just in general.
So if I think about, going back to there's a theme today, obviously we can see this as be her biggest fan, but having a voice and then
Yeah,
actually using it. And I think just from this piece, and there's kind of two approaches. So let's get your thoughts on this. Is one is sort of the egotistical side of it, which is look at me, look what I've done, look at me, look at me. That's one way, right? Or having a voice and saying, this is, here I am, and this is what I can do, right? So one's out of look at me inwards, and one is look what I can do, which is service, which is outwards.
right.
Right. So when you look at those two pieces, what advice would you give? Well, let's just go to like, what advice would you give you to your daughter? What advice would you give to your younger self? And what advice would you give to people that are in that situation, that maybe they're, up for a promotion or a next piece of life or wherever that, is that where life is leading them?
That's tough. I've had to do this a lot throughout my life. Even back in grade school, I can remember seeing spots in a play, at high or at grade school, or just seeing people that felt like they kept winning whenever I would just hide back. I've never really been that self-promoting type. I've just kind of, I don't want to say been a wallflower, but kind of been a wallflower and watched everybody else up until the point where then I get frustrated and say, well, why not me? And then that's whenever I will finally go and say, well, yeah, why not me?
Hmm.
And end up well, end up as the COO of a large successful corporation. So
So I was gonna write that down actually. Yeah. So, yeah, why not you?
yeah. And that's really the question that I ask a lot. Instead of why me, it's why not me? And that whole don't quit, just keep going.
Kind of comes from your dad and your
A little
mom.
bit.
A little
Oh,
bit.
yeah, both of them.
Yeah.
Both of them. My dad came home from Vietnam and came
Mhm.
home to nothing really except for a baby that he left when she was 2 weeks old. So,
Wow.
yeah. So my sister was almost a year whenever he came home, and so he really started from absolutely nothing and um, built his farm up and to a very successful operation. And I couldn't be more proud of my parents
Mm.
for watching. And granted, they had the struggles of the really high interest rates back in the
Oh, right.
mid
The
80s.
80s, yeah.
Yeah, so they struggled really hard through that, but you know I can say I've been on similar struggles, just maybe not to the same extent as them.
One of the things is just to think about this before I move to the next question, but is, going back to the day when I met you in Kansas City for your Vistage group. And it was funny, I was standing here sort of in the sort of the back left corner is where you were sitting. And but it was an interesting thing because you were there. So you were, you were kind of quiet, like you were just sort of there. But what was interesting is that I knew when you read a room and been in a lot of rooms, right, is that you were quiet, but you were powerful, but you also asked really good questions at the right times. And I think that was really quite fascinating about you. And obviously you won the James Pond Award, so here you are, right? There it is.
There he is.
So, but it's an interesting, now that we've had this conversation, it's interesting to see this unfold because, when you're saying earlier about why not me, but so it's sort of that it's I going back to that day as I could see that quiet power that you had. So you're not outselling yourself to others, but you're a powerhouse sitting there quietly and then just doing the asking the right questions at the right times, doing the right things at the right times, and just sort of just always being there, but staying in your power. That's what I see.
Well, I appreciate that. I get that a lot. I don't have to say something. People just know. You know.
Hmm.
And I find it funny, not funny, haha, but just maybe intriguing a little bit of people that I'll just call it being scared of me because I don't see myself as being intimidating, but I've been told that I am. Um, so especially to other females, that
Hmm.
seems to be who I intimidate the most. But it's just funny. You either find me grossly hilarious, which I find myself super funny, or you find me incredibly intimidating and won't approach me at all. And there's really not an in between there for some reason.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because if meeting you, you actually feel your power. And I think that and so the intimidation that they get is not because of you, but it's for their own, it's their own insecurities
Probably.
that they feel that, right? And I
Yeah.
think just as we're having this conversation now, it's starting to make a little more sense, but be your biggest fan. It's starting to make a whole lot more sense as this conversation is kind of unfolding.
Yeah.
So maybe the book really isn't about your daughter.
It's probably really not. There may or may not be some pieces of myself in there, and there may or may not be a sequel, but it won't be called the same, but it may have some of the same backstories to it.
I love it. So, thank you for that, Valerie. The
Yeah.
Valerie. So, next question for you is that geese fly, as you know, because you are now officially a resident gooseologist and you won the James Pond Award. So, you like clearly that you are, I mean, know everything about geese there is to know now. But you do know that geese fly with 71% more efficiency when flying in a V formation than they do flying solo. So, what do you think sort of a secret is from your experience to getting a team flying in that V formation?
So I believe that people will serve you if you serve them. And I try to take care of my people. In fact, one of our previous employees just sent me a video last week about knowing the little things about people, knowing their kids' names, knowing what they do. Did they dress up for Spider-Man for Halloween? And that's always just been who I am. I remember birthdays like crazy. It drives my family crazy that I know people's birthdays. And I'm super number driven, and I put together things like that to make them feel special because I believe if I'm following them, they will in turn follow me.
Interesting, as the ultimate generalist of the world who knows a little about a lot. That's interesting how that just unfolded.
Yeah, I just love people. I think they're incredible. It's great to get to know them on a personal level.
Hmm.
You know, a lot of people, in fact, we've had a few that I've worked with over the past few years, especially their home life was in shambles and Durvet. And I mean, I was just talking to one of them over the weekend, doesn't work here anymore, but just texted me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I miss you."
Mm.
And yesterday happened to be his birthday. And I'm the one who reminded him of that yesterday was his birthday. He had forgotten. when it was and what day it was. And so just things like that, just to make somebody know that they're heard and they're seen is super important.
Hmm. I was just watching this really interesting video yesterday, and it was sort of talking about it was a CEO of a company, but I won't get into it. But it was interesting. Is sort of his whole thing about taking care of his people was, it's really simple. It's a simple thing: is do you hear me? Do you see me? And does what I say matter?
Yeah.
And it was sort of talking around that piece. So it's interesting that you're saying that same thing. I just watched this yesterday, and it was about, do you hear me? Do you see me? And does what I say matter?
Yeah, and a lot of people just they want to know that if they were heard, that there's some kind of action being taken. And of course, and I'm probably more transparent than I should be with a lot of people, but I'll tell them, I can't do everything, but I can do something. But if I'm not asking, of course they're not telling
Mhm.
because they just assume that they have no voice. And in my mind, if I can get the people that are doing the job to realize that there's a better way to do the job, I can sit in my office all day long and think that I know how to do their job and do it better, but they're the ones who know. So why not ask them? That's my biggest thing is why not ask them the questions and get them to say, hey, I think that if we did this, we could do this. And it may not work, but what's the harm in trying? We don't do it again.
So you could actually help them be their biggest fan.
Their own. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. This is just unfolding like crazy. So that's no, I love it because the fact that, like, and I'm just hearing about, I mean, when I ask this question to a lot of people, everybody has their own perspective on what they think about getting geese, flying in a V formation, how to get your team flying in a V formation. Um, so you're one of the only people so far that, has sort of come from this approach of just saying that, hey, it's a two-way street. I don't have all the answers, right? And just, empowering people just, to be able to be seen and heard. One of the
Right.
right there's a lot of, a lot of times in business it gets into, more the brainy side of it, or the more cerebral side of what we need to do, and you didn't go there at all. You actually went to the heart of
Oh,
actually
yeah.
taking care of people. So
I'll fully admit I'm not the smartest girl in the room. I mean, I fully will say that, but I will read enough into, and I'm huge on collaboration, get everybody's opinions. I think we're all smarter together. That's if I had a superpower, that would be the one is pulling the right people together to get them
well, there,
flying in a
yeah,
V formation.
there you go. And it comes back to what I was saying earlier, is like you are the bowl who holds the salad. See?
I'm the bull. I've
That's
really
right.
never considered myself a bull, but
But just see how, like, I pull things together. I hold it all together. I see how things connect, and right, and I get it moving, right?
yes.
So you're not the one to set the structure and set the rules and set those things. That can
Oh,
be there, but yeah, oh no, is right. And then but you see how it actually all integrates, right? With some incredible ideas, of course. So, right, that's probably being part of the cool squirrel club, that piece. So next
world.
question for you. Next question for you is the Valerie is what are you doing to better the pond? What are you doing to make the world a better place? What ripples are you creating out there on the planet?
Good ripples or bad ripples?
Well, I don't know.
I
The
mean,
ripples all the same.
oh gosh, Warren, that's a tough question. I try not to ruffle feathers unless it's needed. Um, but probably just making sure people are heard. I think that that's super important. In fact, I've had a couple people that we have hired that have said, and I'll just give an example. I really thought I hated warehouse work. Verbatim. I really thought I hated warehouse work. As it turns out, I didn't like the managers of the place that I was doing warehouse work. It turns out I love warehouse work. And now that I work for you, I love what I'm doing. And it's just, it's being kind to people. It really doesn't seem that hard, but we ride on very slim margins and
Hmm.
don't get to overhire. We run very lean,
Hmm.
but we try to maximize every dollar and get the right people and treat them well. And that's just 98% of them, right? Treat them well and they'll treat you well.
Well, yeah, which goes back to the previous question, right? Is in getting the team running the information like what I do, I do for you, you'll do back. So there's,
Right.
here's the same thing happening again. And I think it's interesting you say this, and the old adage, and we've heard it a million times, that people don't leave their jobs, they leave their managers,
True.
right? And it's interesting just listening to you saying, the where it's not about, the warehouse work is the warehouse work. That's, warehouse work is warehouse work,
Right.
but the culture and the manager they work for and the people they work for, that's the differentiator. And if I'm hearing you correctly, I mean that's the ripples that you're creating. Now, here's the interesting thing about this is that what happens at work and how they feel at work is also going to happen at home,
I hope so.
right? So the interesting thing is, and I'm coming to this conclusion, I'm doing some work on this, but it's really quite fascinating, is I think that a lot of performance at work is not happening at work, whether it's going to be poor performance or high performance, it's actually happening at home. Because if they're at work, I hate my job, this is awful, I don't like warehouse work, and they go home, and what do? Well, then they complain to their family about, right, oh my God, I hate my job, and right. So then number one, who wants to be around that? Number two is what do the children learn of that family? They learn that work must be awful and hard and right. So that's the lesson that you're teaching. But if they on the flip side of high performance is, you know, oh my God, I had a great day today at work in the warehouse, same job. But they go, it's so much fun and I actually quite enjoy this. And I got to talk to these people, I got to do this and that, and they take that home, right? When they talk to their partner and the kids listen, what message are they getting?
Right.
Right? So if it's going to be miserable at home, it's going to be miserable at work. If it's going to be really good at home because of that same energy, it's going to be good at work. So that I always say you take yourself with you wherever you go. But it's interesting just when this conversation is, and I think about just you and saying about, what are you doing to better the pond? What ripples are you creating? Those are the ripples that you're creating because you're putting out there that people are heard, they're seen, they're listened to, they belong, and they get to take that home to their family. So the ripples that you're creating is actually going not only to their partner, but it could be the next generation as well.
I hope so. I hope if somebody was to ever say, "Hey, what did you get from Valerie?" I hope it's something like that. You know, I hope they feel better at the after meeting me. And like I said, I got a text message over the weekend from somebody that we had to let go, but I let them go with grace.
Hmm.
And they then 4 months later text me back. Another one that texted me last week. I've got one that I had to let go 2 years ago. He still texts me every so often just to check in and that's the stuff that's worth it. Um, I try to really let people, if we have to let somebody go, try to do it with grace. They're still a human, still love them, want the absolute best for them. And I make sure that they know that whenever we have to, you know, free up their future, so to speak, that that they know, I will still write you a letter of recommendation. You did fabulous things. You just can't do some of these other things here.
I always say there's nothing wrong to be a great business to be from. Because when you let them go because they're just not a fit, and that's okay,
Yeah.
right? But they felt cared, they felt all right, and you let them go with grace. You felt like that they were loved, they belonged, they cared for, and you're given, you just provide them a next opportunity. But what's interesting enough is they're still texting you back. So obviously, without a doubt, right, you left a mark, and you're still creating those ripples over that period of time because of that.
Yeah. And some of them still come back and visit. If they didn't leave town or whatever, they'll still come back and visit.
Right?
I
Yeah.
and
So that
it's
says a
funny,
lot.
new employees will ask, does everybody come back and visit like that? And well, we hope so,
I hope so. Yeah, you're a great business to be from. And
That's
then,
cool. I love that.
yeah. All right. So now here's what we're getting into the end here right now. We're on the home stretch here. The Valerie is what is one lesson that you've learned along your journey or along your path um, that either you would share with an entrepreneur starting a business today. So that's number one. We can look at it that way. Or I'm thinking that's the influence of your book. Something that you've learned along the way that you might be able to, maybe even pass on to somebody getting into business or somebody, again, of your kids' age. What's one big lesson you learned along your path that you'd want to pay it forward?
So if you would have talked to Valerie 10 years ago, this is not the version of Valerie that you would have gotten 10 years ago. This letting people go with grace, this um, more mature handling of things is
Mhm.
something that I've learned over time. I became a huge reader and podcaster back in 2017. I became one of Dave Ramsey's financial coaches and had to do reading and listening during that series. And that was what really turned me on to I need to be a better leader, I need to be a better learner, and I need to be a better listener. And all three of those things, not necessarily in that order, but yeah, I just never stop learning, just keep growing all the time.
If the Valerie now was talked to the Valerie 10 years ago, would you what if you were to sort of condense that, what would you say to your earlier Valerie from what you've learned?
Something that I tell my husband, you need to calm down. And we say that in jest. He knows that.
Good.
He will listen to this. Yeah, you just need to calm down a little bit. That's, you know, this isn't whenever we're in a let's see, what do a difficult discussion or something like that. This is just in lighthearted jest, but literally just never stop learning. But you do need to calm down and love people a little bit more. They're human.
Mhm. Got it. That's the second week I had breakfast with my tech. What's all you have your Vistage chair, which is Tony. I have my Tech Canada chair, which is Gordon. We just had breakfast this morning, and we were just having this conversation about placing love into business, and I've been talking about it for the past
Yeah.
few years, and it's quite interesting. That's how it's shifting. So you just said it, right? It's like that because before in the back when it was like sort of the command and control type leadership there was no room for emotion. It was just you just do your job. And now we're starting to see this sort of happen as it's unfolding, getting more on the emotional side of it. Is saying, yeah, like I love my people, right? And back then it used to be really weird if you ever said it, and now it's starting to shift. So it's funny you said that because we just had the conversation this morning. So then that's where it's going.
Yeah, so there's a book called Love is Just Damn Good Business.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the beginning of
Hmm.
this revelation to including love in my leadership. And I've I fully believe that if I love them, they'll love me back.
Yeah. Love it. All right. Last question for you, Valerie, and then we're going to wrap up. So,
Okay.
the Valerie, here's the big question of the day, right? If you were standing on a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
Well, it would go back to be your own biggest fan. There's not somebody out there that's going to save you, that's going to promote you, that's looking for you, or even thinking about you. That if you want it, you've got to show it and you've got to go for it.
And doing it through a place of power versus a place of ego. Is
Oh, that's totally fair. Yes.
that fair? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just added that on there. Just little
No, that's,
topping.
yeah. No, drop the mic.
I love it. I love it. So, the Valerie. I've been waiting for this. We were we were emailing back and forth. We weren't sure we were going to do it, right? And now we're finally here. So this is like, I just absolutely love it. So I do want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for your stories. And if anybody wants to find the Valerie Paris at
Yes.
Durvet, and even learn about your book, learn about you, the company, however, where do they go to find you?
So my handles on everything is V Paris, so VEE Paris Paree. That's kind of my call sign that I've left everything to. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, wherever V Paris.
And what about getting hold of you via email? Is that some also as well through the company?
Yeah, so if you want to email me, just go to my LinkedIn and you can connect to me there. I'd rather not give my email out to everybody.
100%. Okay, but if it's not through LinkedIn if they wanted to, then yeah, we don't want to bombard your inbox. So
Yeah,
all right. So fair enough. We'll get that in the show notes. So if people want to connect with you on social media, then they can, and they want to find out about the book, they can. And maybe they might, even something you said today that they might get inspired from a leadership perspective. They say, tell me, geez, Valerie, tell me more about what you're doing about, loving your people. So you never know, right? Because they might help you and you might help them, and
absolutely.
this
No,
work
I would
goes on.
I would love that.
Okay. All right. So there you have it, folks. The time. This the first. You did amazing, Valerie. You did
Hey,
amazing on the podcast. First
I mean,
one,
I put my halo on and everything today,
and it is
so
super impressive. Now very shiny.
thank
Like,
you.
I mean, I don't know what your secret is.
I
Well,
would pull out my tiara, my princess tiara, but it's hiding right
is
now.
hiding. Okay. Well, next time, because we might have once the book's out, we might have another conversation. You never know.
I would love that.
Okay. So, all right, Valerie. So, the Valerie, thank you again for your time. Thank you for everything you're doing to better the pond. And seriously, from helping your daughters out because they're going to take your daughter and your son, right? The things that they've learned along from you, the people that have also learned from you along the way, and how they're going out and you're creating the ripples that you're creating. So, and this is Warren Barry, and I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond, to better the pond, because we're better together.
We are
Thank you
better
so
to.
much. Thank you so much, the Valerie.
Thank you. This has been so much fun.
Absolutely.